You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is July 17th, 2023 meeting of the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting of the Redevelopment Commission meeting to order. It is July 17th, 2023. Roll call. Ms. Deitch.
Present.
Mr. Warner.
Present.
And the chair is present. Mr. Gertner and Mr. Dennis are both out of town tonight. Minutes of the executive session from June 12th and the hybrid meeting from June 12th.
I move that we approve the minutes from 6/12/2023 executive session and 6/12/2023 hybrid regular meeting.
I will second that.
There's a motion and a second that we approve the minutes from the executive session on June 12th and the hybrid meeting from June 12th. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Claims.
This is a claims docket for July 17th, 2023. For payroll and payroll June 2023, we had CDBG reimbursables, staff, and commissioners. From the operating account, we have Great America Financial for copier fees for 2023. Saranac Law Offices for legal retainer for June of 2023. From the North TIF, we had Baker Tilly for North TIF pass-through letters for the station block, Barnes and Thornburg for economic development matters ending in February 2023, Barnes and Thornburg for legal services for Bloxham arbitration ending in 5/31/23, Butler Fairman Seifert for Washington Park Boulevard streetscaping for 5/1/23 through 5/31/23, the City of Michigan City for reimbursement of wire transfer for Wabash Street refund for 2021 bond debt service payment. City of Michigan City reimbursement wire transfer for Elston Grove refunded 2021 bond lease payment. City of Michigan City for reimbursement wire transfer for Lafayette Barker refunded 2019 bond lease payment. We also had Firm 70 Consulting for Bloxham relocation. We had Global Engineering for boundaries and surveys for 4/24/23 through 5/28/23. HDR Engineering for station block TOD modifications through 6/3/23. NICTD NICTD for reimbursements per agreement. Review by AECom. This was a peer review by AECom for 10/11/22 through 6/12/23. Blue, Shalley, Racher, and Braun for Trail Creek Properties, expenses and advances. Primera for engineering services 5/1/23 through 5/31/23. Saranac Law Offices for legal services North TIF June 2023. Wallach, Summers, and Haas for legal services for the Transit Center for June 2023. From the South TIF, we had City of Michigan City reimbursement wire transfer for double track 2019 bond lease payment. City of Michigan City reimbursement wire transfer for Ohio Street 2018 bond lease payment. Baker Tilly South TIF pass-through letters. DLZ for South TIF connectivity improvement project pay 16. Haas and Associates for South TIF connectivity improvement project. Saranac Law Offices for legal services in the South TIF June 2023. From the East TIF, we had Baker Tilly for the East TIF pass-through letters. And from the Northeast TIF, we had Baker Tilly for the Northeast TIF pass-through letters.
Okay, any questions or comments on the claims?
I move for adoption.
I will second.
There's a motion and a second that we approve the claims as presented. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Deitch.
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Financial report.
This is a financial report for 5/31/2023. Cash in our operating account, we have $142,522.96. In the Southside TIF account, we have $6,317,156.75. Southside TIF debt service account, we have $136,308.50. The Southside TIF capital account, we have $16,387.95. North End TIF account, $2,167,789.97. From the East Side TIF account, we have $134,441.09. Northeast TIF account, we have $570,099.37. County business loan fund, we have $133,333.00 for a total assets of $9,818,039.59.
Okay, any questions on the financials?
Move for approval of our balance sheet.
I second.
There's a motion and a second that we approve the financials as presented. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Deitch,
Aye.
Mr. Warner,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, next item is a request to utilize the northwest and southwest corners of Franklin and 7th for the Great Lakes Grand Prix Block Party.
This is sorry, Mr. President. This is a request. This is a yearly request. You may recall the Great Taste of Michigan City used to utilize this location. It's since been since they did not do it this year. Main Street didn't do it last year. It got taken over by the Block Party, which is put on by Terry Greetham and the Grand Prix race group. It's managed by Miss Dee Haddad. She is hired to put on this event. I think I provided you guys a layout. As Mr. Warner brought up in our meeting earlier, it is not quite the most accurate of layouts. We do not own the parking lot associated with art space behind that, so that should probably be carved out. But as far as use of the vacant RAST areas, we've provided use of that in the past, and I would suggest that we allow it to happen again. As far as the road closures and the placement of things on the road, we're not in charge of that. That's more Board of Works related. And then I think whatever insurance they provide the Board of Works, we would be provided and named as well as an additional insured. Don't see anyone here from there today, but I don't know that that's why D kind of provided the layout today.
Okay, any questions or comments for Skylar?
We need to get formal approval, right?
Absolutely, we need to give formal approval, and then I think we should just maybe have Alan contact. I think they already went through Board of Works for this, but I could be mistaken. But we could just get a hold of Terry and have Terry provide the what insurance was provided.
Yeah, I think they went through it today.
I think they did. Yes.
Yeah, I move for approval of usage of our proposed for the proposed location of 7th and Franklin of our lots there for the block party.
Question for Skylar. You said that the Board of Works has already approved this layout.
I think they approved the layout, but they probably may not have caught the difference in shapes. The art spaces. I'll check tomorrow. I think it's understood that they won't be using the art space parking lot. They never have, but I'll check with Terry just to make sure that we have an understanding that we won't be using.
Yeah, our motion only includes our
property.
Yeah. as an addition to, I believe the kidpreneurs are working with Miss D Haddad. They had asked about this space. My understanding is D is going to include them in that event. So I don't think we need to give them permission. They're just going to be included as an umbrella. So.
Okay, thank you. I will second the motion.
There's a motion and a second that we allow for the Great Lakes Grand Prix Block Party to utilize the northwest and southwest corners of 7th and Frank. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Deitch.
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next item is global engineering proposal for legal descriptions, general engineering, and surveying services.
So this task order is for the legal descriptions, and I need him to do one more survey for us that was not included in the original surveys that I asked him to do. So what I asked him for was in order, unfortunately, in the short order of things, we needed the legals done for tonight's approvals. He worked very hard to get them done. As you noticed, one of them is 24 pages long. We needed those done as quickly as possible. And then the extra survey would be for one more bus stop. That's a small survey. It's a sliver of land that will that's on woodland. So that when we do our bus shelter program, we'll have all the necessary easements and surveys and things of that nature. He has completed the other survey work, which is what you guys approved in the claims tonight. This is not that claim, though. This is something additional. And then I would just ask that we would approve this to make sure we make Shem whole on providing us the documents for adding our documents to us.
Move to approve the task order for global engineering.
Second.
Motion second, that we approve the task order for global engineering. Any additional discussion?
I just say one thing about this, and just kudos to Shem here. We didn't have an agreement with him. And I always like to joke with Shem and saying, hey, we could really screw you over this now. Thanks for your work.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think the relationship that we have with Global and the relationship specifically with Shem allows us from time to time to be able to have somebody, a company, a Michigan City company, do something for us in a somewhat crisis situation, and then we make them whole at a later date.
Yeah, and I would just add too that since he did the survey work for us, the leftover money that would have been left over after the survey work would have probably been when I sent him these locations and these sizes of these legal descriptions. I think he agreed to it, but I think he was maybe a little bit caught off guard with respect to the size and the magnitude. So I thank him for working with us. And we would eat through that money pretty quickly because it wasn't a lot left.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve the engineering proposal from Global Engineering for surveying services. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Deitch.
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And consultant engagement letter for firm 90 for the 70 for the relocation consultancy.
I'm going to hand this over to Alan. Alan's been working diligently on this project.
This is, as you know, with regards to our disagreements with Bloxham and the agreement that was executed in 2009, that agreement says any dispute resolution must occur through mandatory arbitration. The original consultants and experts we had in this project back in from 2006 to 2009 that ended up with the agreement have both passed away. So we need a new expert, a new consultant to assist us in the arbitration. Firm 70 was recommended to us by our legal consultant, Brian Casey. The three of us, Brian, Tom, and I interviewed with this Bob Swenson, who is one of the co-owners of Firm 70. And he's an expert in the area of moving factories from one location to another. And specifically, the expertise goes to actual costs. In our interview with him, he also brought up some legal defenses that we were not aware of. And has already started to work on this. I sent him the agreement, much like what we just talked about with Shem. I sent him a copy of the agreement. We had one subsequent discussion since then with respect to moving on with this. So the purpose of this consulting agreement and approving this is so that we can formally engage in services to serve as our consultant over the course of between now and next May, when the arbitration is scheduled for. But to work with us during this period of time. The $5,000 that you approved in the claims is his initial retainer and will go towards the work he does on this project from this day forward until such time as that $5,000 exhausted, at which point then we'll continue to supplement it. But purposes tonight, you've already approved the $5,000 retainer is to approve the engagement letter so that he can start working with us.
Okay, any questions, Alan, on this?
Nope, I move that we approve the engagement letter with Firm 70.
I will second that.
There's a motion second. Do we approve the engagement letter with Firm 70? Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Dennis.
Aye.
Ms. Deitch.
Aye.
Mr. Warner.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And for the record, let it show that Ms. Dennis is now in attendance. Okay, declaratory resolution to consolidate the north and south TIF areas.
I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Randolph Rampolla, who is here. And I believe Mr. Andy Mauser is here as well. I'm going to let them go through it again. You may recall at our last meeting, we kind of went through this. We also did the presentation to the city council as well as a departmental presentation. So here we are again to start the process. And Mr. Rampolla, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I'm again Randy Rampolla from Barnes and Thornburg with offices in South Bend. The declaratory resolution before you essentially does three things. It consolidates the north redevelopment area and the north side and the south side economic development area. It designates the station block where the project that will be financed will be located as a separate allocation area for purposes of tax increment, and that'll provide a 25-year life. And then thirdly, it provides for an additional expansion of the area as consolidated that would allow for some, Skylar, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it works down Michigan Boulevard.
Yeah. So what the idea is that we have we actually, from what I consider from a planning standpoint, we have two main streets into Michigan City. We have Michigan Boulevard and we have 421. I think Michigan Boulevard is just as important as 421 from the standpoint of it's the first exit when you cross over the border. People get off and they get off the exit there and they come down, and we don't have let's just think about the things we have downtown. We don't have facade grants. We don't have tools that could help with economic development in that area, not just facade grants, but there's other opportunities. There's vacant land there that we could potentially purchase, clean if need be, things of that nature. We don't have those tools or that availability there. So this offers up some opportunity to help out the area.
So with those three purposes, what the resolution does is, the first thing it does is it expands the south side area. So the south side is the existing economic development area. We expand it northward so that it connects to the northern redevelopment area. Then the resolution designates the station block, which is referred to as the mixed-use transit project allocation area in the resolution, as a separate allocation area. That will provide a 25-year life once the bonds are issued. Then thirdly, the north and south side areas are combined. So we've expanded the south side north. It connects to the north, and then you end up with one large consolidated area. As consolidated, then the area is designated as an economic development area, and the resolution makes the findings necessary to change the north redevelopment area into an economic development area. Finally, the Michigan Boulevard, what Skylar was just referring to, is referred to as an expansion area to that consolidated area. A couple of things, well, and I'll finally say then the resolution makes clear that the existing base dates and the base assessment dates in the existing north and south areas will not change. So the only thing that we're changing from a date standpoint for the areas is the designation of the mixed use transit project allocation area. That'll have its own 25-year life. And then the Michigan Boulevard expansion area will have its own 25-year life. The reason, as I think I alluded to last time at the meeting, the consolidation will allow you then to use any increment being generated from the entirety of the area within the entirety of the area. So that if you have TIF in the north that could be available for projects in the south, you can do that. And to the extent you have projects in the south, or TIF in the south that you have projects in the north, you can use it that way. We have used Southside TIF twice now for projects. Well, once, and this one pending. One was double tracking, and then without the consolidation, we had concluded we could do this. We could use Southside TIF to fund the station block project. The key point with respect to those projects are they both are transformational. They both serve the entirety of the area. To consolidate now will allow for projects to be funded from any and all of the TIF, even if they're not transformational. So it does provide you greater flexibility going forward. Many communities have done this consolidation of areas so that they have that availability. I'm over in South Bend. Mishawaka did it with their Grape Road TIF, their Northwest Project Area TIF, and they consolidated with their downtown, and a lot of their downtown development then is being funded in part from downtown and in part from what used to be that Northwest Project Area up on Grape Road. The north area is older, and Andy can speak to some of the termination dates, but the reason when the north area was established, there was no such thing as an economic development area. That came into the statute later. The economic development area designation is more related to job creation and economic development. And that is typically what is used today more commonly than the redevelopment area, which is identifying areas that are in need of redevelopment. The old term used to be eradicating blight, and blight has a negative connotation, so they took it out of the statute. But by the combination, we get to the same point. You are providing for economic development in the area. So that's effectively what the declaratory resolution does. It is admittedly a bit of a complicated resolution, but I wanted to break it down into those pieces and parts. I won't go into the legal descriptions because he did a wonderful job. But the areas are as described in each of the exhibits. I'll leave it at that. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn it over to Andy if there's any. I know Andy will speak more on the lease financing, but I don't know if there's anything you would add on the declaratory.
Randy, just kind of the next steps, just to lay that out. Our next steps would be we would go to Planning Commission. This would be referred to Planning Commission.
Right.
And then from Planning Commission, it would then go to it would be recommended to the City Council at that point in time, just to give the next steps for everybody.
Right. And then the final step, of course, would be coming back before you with a public hearing. And so we're anticipating if you adopt the resolution this evening, we'd be in the Plan Commission on the 25th next week, and then go to the Common Council on August 1st and be back before you on August 14th.
Just add just a couple of things. Good evening, Andy Mauser with Baker Tilly. Just a couple points. As Randy mentioned, there's really three things this is accomplishing. One is to create that new allocation area for the project specifically. Two is to consolidate the north side and south side TIFs. And then the third is the expansion along East Michigan Boulevard. Just a couple highlights, as Randy mentioned, you will get a new 25-year life with the new allocation area, allow you to maximize the capture of the new project. I think it will also help kind of keep the calculations clean. An important part of this project is we do have guarantees from the developer that they will be paying, a certain amount in tax increment going forward. So by keeping it isolated on an allocation area basis, that will ensure that we're able to, easily check that in the future. Really with the consolidation, I think is mainly for flexibility. As Randy mentioned, to give you flexibility to spin from the north side to the south side to the north side. Going forward, something that was really kind of started with double tracking here a few years ago. And then third, with the expansion along East Michigan Boulevard, there are expirations upcoming in your existing TIF areas. There's a hope that this will certainly spur additional growth within the city. So, a new area will be, one that's hopefully starting to capture some of those areas start to expire here in a few years. So just kind of a couple of the highlights of those three items being taken care of here.
Okay, any questions of Randy or Andy? If not, we got three resolutions here. We should probably take them one by one. Resolution 423. Yeah.
I move that we adopt a resolution number 423 with the City Redevelopment Commission to designate and declare certain areas in Michigan City as explained to consolidate and expand our economic development. I'm trying to area. Yes, it's a lot. You want me to read the whole thing? For the record, I think we should read it. So, the resolution of the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission to designate and declare certain areas of the city of Michigan City, Indiana, as economic development areas to expand the South Side Economic Development Area, consolidate the Community Center number 1 expanded urban renewal area, and South Side Economic Development Area as an economic development area, expand the consolidated economic development area, and to consolidate the development plans for said areas and regarding certain related matters. That's my motion.
I'll second the motion.
All right, there's a motion and a second that we approve resolution number 4-23. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Dennis?
Aye.
Ms. Deitch?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Resolution 4-23 passes. South TIF Connectivity Improvement Project update and approval.
As of right now, there's a lot to report on. Yeah, you have probably seen the new sidewalks that are going in down south, and then there's new signalization that will happen at Larkspur Lane, and then we are in the process right now of working on Town Center Drive. I don't know, do you have any, you want to share a little bit about that?
One quick update since our last meeting. I have finally gotten a hold of an uppity up in Lowe's, and I finally got a hold of an uppity up in Meyer, which was no small task. Both of them have been very receptive to the One, they were unaware that they owned their portion of Town Center Drive directly in front of their establishments, and two, very receptive to the idea of conveying those properties to the city of Michigan City, so that we can pave over or repave Town Center Drive to make it a respectable road up to code. Didn't see any problem with that. I expect to hear back from Lowe's. Today's the 17th, on the 20th. They have their meeting on the 18th, and she said she'd get back to me on the 20th. And I expect to hear back from the Meyer store also this week, both of whom will be in the affirmative. That then just leaves 421 LLC, who I've had numerous conversations with. He always says he has no problems. His attorney's going to call me, and then his attorney never calls me. So the only thing I'm asking for tonight would be, in the event I can't get an informal agreement with 421 LLC to commence with an enforcement code enforcement action against them, and tell them to basically, you can fix the road or convey the property to us and we'll fix the road. But I just don't know where that stands at this point. So, but that's point of the matter is, we will have everything but the 421 LLC, which is the furthest south part of Town Center Drive. We will own ultimately all of those. I expect by the end of the week or the first part of next week, at least the framework will be in place for that.
Yes. At that point in time, what the next steps for that are just to work with Attorney LePage Fisk, Corporate Counsel, make sure that everything's acceptable to the Board of Works with the agreements, and then a dedication of the road makes it formal for the city. And then at that point in time, we can add it to our NDOT inventory where it's qualifies for CCMG, and we draw MVH funding off of it for regular paving. There's just a few more steps to take, but this is a big step in my opinion. So
Alan's looking for authorization to proceed with code enforcement.
as needed, right?
As
Okay.
Question, do we need to take any action on the Meyer and Lowe's too at this time, or have you done it already?
Assuming those things, both those companies come through with what we've talked about, as Skylar mentioned, then we'll get that. We'll draft the documents necessary for that, but then run them through the Board of Works and the city attorney, Amber LePage, just to make sure that we're in a position where, because ultimately the redevelopment commission is not accepting the parcel or the roadway, but the city is, so they can add to the inventory so they can get state funding to repair damage. We're only involved at this point because of the South TIF connectivity project, and this will become part of that to improve that whole area down there. This is the second phase of that overall project.
Yeah, and we're going to take enough right of way, the legal descriptions as laid out, which have been provided. So we'll have our space for sidewalks, bus stops. We're going to not just get curb to curb. We're going to get a little extra to make sure that we can do our transportation expansion in the near future.
Thank you.
I move that we authorize Attorney Saranac to move forward with code enforcement for our South TIF connectivity improvement project.
I will second.
There's a motion and a second that we authorize Attorney Saranac to move forward with our enforcement. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Dyke?
Aye.
Ms. Dennis? Aye.
All right. Ms. Deitch and Ms. Dennis.
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Finding approval for Station Block Development Project.
So this is a two-part two. I believe we also need to approve the disposition of this project as well. And with that, I will hand it off to Mr. Randolph Rampola and Mr. Andy Mauser. Thank you, guys.
So the first resolution, which is 2-23, the disposition resolution, this really just is dotting I's and crossing T's as it relates to the disposition of the station block parcels that are owned by the Redevelopment Commission. It provides for an offering sheet, authorizes the publications. And so with that, then we're anticipating there wouldn't be any offers. They would come, no offers would come back at the next meeting, and then you would be free to dispose of the property. The other resolution is resolution 3-23, and that is approving the form of the lease for the financing. And this is the first formal step you would take then with respect to the station block bond approval process. I think at the prior meeting, we handed out these copies of this. If everybody would like one, happy to hand them out again. But it basically shows and I'll just hold it up here, but it shows the lease is essentially the security for the bonds. So the city itself will issue the bonds. The proceeds of the bonds will be provided to the building corporation, who in turn will provide them to the developer, and the developer will construct the project. The Redevelopment Commission and the building corporation will enter into a lease, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And it's that lease that secures those bond payments. I will add, the building corporation did meet last week for the first time, elected officers, and took the action it needed to take to approve the form of the lease. So the resolution before you tonight approves the form of the lease and sets a public hearing on it at your meeting on August 14th, at which time you would hold the public hearing and then take action on the lease again. The lease would be subject to approval by the Common Council, and that is expected to be before the Common Council at their meeting on August 1st as well. The lease itself provides for a term of not to exceed 25 years and a maximum lease rental of $2,750,000. That lease rental, and Andy can explain in greater detail, but that's based on the current high side assumptions for the bond amount, and 25 years is the expected bond term. Once the lease does provide, I think in section 2 or 3, it does provide that once the bonds are sold, the lease rental will be reduced to match whatever the debt service on the bonds are. So ultimately, the lease rental will be the debt service payment that'll pay the bonds. The asset that will be leased, I think we talked a little bit about this before, but it is a portion of Michigan Boulevard running from East 4th Street down to Mott's Parkway. We had worked with Skylar, and Skylar had worked with the engineering folks to identify a portion of a road that would be roughly equivalent to the value of the lease rentals that would be paid. And it was determined that Michigan Boulevard filled the bill, if you will. You may think it's odd to lease a street, but it certainly has been done by other communities. It is a very secure, from a rating agency standpoint, a very secure item to lease, because certainly cities need streets. And if something were ever to happen to the street, the lease itself provides substitution language so that the city and the Redevelopment Commission would be responsible for identifying another street in the weird chance that something bad would happen to Michigan Boulevard. During the term of the lease, like we talked about at the last meeting as well, just for the record, the city would retain control of the street. Any construction, any work that would need to be done certainly could be taken care of. The one thing that we wouldn't want to see happen is the street be closed. And if it were to be closed for any length of time, then again, we'd look at the substitution language and suggest that the street be replaced. But I know, given that it's a 4-lane road, and I think, Skylar, that was one of the reasons you thought it was important to choose it, because if you had reconstruction, you could.
It's a traffic management issue at that point in time, and if we did need to substitute, we did some studies on other streets to get prices as well. It's just this one was an easy switch, easy button, because it's all one street, so it was nice.
Yeah. The lease is very similar to other leases you've entered into with the Redevelopment Authority. We're using the building corporation again as a reminder, simply because of the need to have the building corporation in that position of loaning the proceeds to the developer as they come from the city. The Redevelopment Authority can't do that in the way the building corporation can. So I'm happy to answer any questions about either resolution, and particularly the lease. And I think Andy can probably speak to the finances again as it relates to the bond financing. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, Randy. And I'll try to be brief again. I do have numbers with me. Those numbers we updated in May, and those numbers still hold pretty true. The taxable bond market tends to pretty closely follow what the Fed, the FOMC does. And so far this year, those actions have been pretty predictable. So I think the rates that we've got in those numbers are still a good estimate. I think if we were to sell bonds today, we would be a bit under what we had shown in those May numbers. But there is still potential, of another hike or two in rates here before we would get bonds issued this fall. So just a couple highlights in the lease. The lease does authorize a maximum bond of up to $22 million. Our current estimate's right in the $21.4 to $21.5 million range. So again, under that $22 million estimate. As Randy mentioned, it does allow for a 25-year bond term, which we do anticipate a full 25-year term. It also allows for a maximum lease rental of $2.75 million. Again, with this being a 25-year bond, we think the lease rental will really only exceed, probably $2 million, maybe a maximum of about 2.4, so under that 2.75 million. And we'll really only kind of be at that level for about a 12 or 13-year period, kind of towards the front of the financing. And that's really twofold. One is to structure the repayment kind of with the expiration in your existing north side and south side tip areas. And then two is to keep the repayment front loaded. The more we pay off in the early years, the less interest expense across the life of the financing. So really, only from about 2027 to 2039 will you be, even close to that $2.75 million level, and should be something much less than that. And then really before 2027, and then especially after that 2039, the payments will drop off quite a bit. As Randy mentioned, a couple items. One, the bonds will be backed by property tax, but then any available revenues of the RDC can be used for repayment. That, along with that substitution provision that's in the lease, that should hopefully get these bonds rated at the A+ existing rating of the city, which will help us obtain the lowest potential interest rate. And then also by leasing an existing asset, by leasing a portion of Michigan Boulevard here rather than the project itself, we'll be able to make payments immediately and not once project completion. And by doing so, saving several years of interest that would otherwise need to be paid out of the financing, we're estimating that could potentially save about $3 to $4 million on the total size of the financing. So just kind of a couple points behind the structure and some of those provisions in the lease, but certainly glad to answer any questions.
Andy, can you talk a little bit about these numbers based upon basically no growth? Basically, we're just saying this is the worst case scenario. We have no more development. And can you talk a little bit about that? And then can you talk about the coverage a little bit? I think I know Bill asked a little bit about those last time. And I thought they were good points that you made with respect to assuring the public that we're in good shape and that it's a sound bond and that we're able to repay this.
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal here is for as much of the repayment to come from the project itself. So the new allocation area with those guarantees from Flaherty and Collins will pay a large portion of the debt service. As we've discussed in some of the previous meetings, a smaller portion of the repayment will come from your existing north side area and your existing south side area. We've not assumed any growth in those areas. With the expansion here on Michigan Boulevard, with your transportation development district, there's hope that there'll be quite a bit of additional growth that's spurred by this project. But even looking, if you don't have another dollar in growth based on, over where you are for 2023, your TIF coverage should still remain pretty close to 150%. So for every dollar of debt service, you've still got $1.50 of revenues coming in. And that's important, obviously, for coverage on the debt to make sure that money's there, but then also to make sure the Redevelopment Commission can continue to do other things outside of just debt repayment.
So it doesn't affect our safe facade grants or things of that nature. We will still be able to function and do our other projects essentially.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wanted to make 3 quick points. One or two, I guess. One is just to follow up. I know I didn't say it, and maybe Andy did. If he did, I apologize, but there will be a taxpayer agreement. So the TIF from that station block project area will be guaranteed by the developer. So they're signing that taxpayer agreement. The other point was in terms of all of the overall approvals, I mentioned the building corporation, but the city council, common council will, as the city's the issuer of the bonds, they will in fact review and hopefully adopt the bond ordinance that allows the bonds to be issued. So they're on track to do that so that the ordinance will be up for first reading tomorrow, and then take the 2 meetings in August to consider that and hopefully adopt it. The Economic Development Commission, because those bonds are being issued under the Economic Development Statute, the EDC has to meet as well, and they are scheduled to meet on August 1st with respect to the bonds, and they will hold a public hearing that's statutorily required as well. So I just wanted to get those additional approvals out. Thank you.
So, do we need 2 approvals? We need the disposition, and then we would need so if you so choose, a disposition approval, and then approval of 223, and then of 323. Okay, so just 2 separate motions. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Mr. Rampolla or Mr. Mauser before?
I move that we approve a resolution 223, a resolution of the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission regarding disposition of property.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Do we approve resolution number 2-23? Any additional discussion?
One last comment. You may recall part of the process way back when we first started talking about a developmental project, including a mixed-use portion on the station block property. We had retained the services of National, or what is it?
Neighborhood
Institute.
Oh man, Neighborhood Capital Institute, Miss Ruth Warren.
And we had part of that process was we had thought maybe we had covered this disposition of property. It effectively did the exact same thing. We set out requests for bids or requests for projects, requests for proposals, and for this particular area. And then, as you know, there was a committee formed, and we ended up with Flaherty and Collins and awarded the agreement to them. Unfortunately, the specific language of that did not meet the statutory requirements for this, hence the reason for why we have to do resolution 223.
Okay. We'll take the vote. Ms. Dennis?
Aye.
Ms. Deitch?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Resolution 2-23 is approved.
I make a motion that we adopt resolution 323, a resolution of the Michigan City Redevelopment Commission approving a proposed lease with the City of Michigan City Building Corporation relating to the mixed-use transit center project, authorizing publication of notice of public hearing in connection therewith, and all matters related thereto.
I will second that.
There's a motion and a second that we approve resolution number 3-23. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. Ms. Dennis?
Aye.
Ms. Deitch?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. All right.
Thank you guys for coming tonight. Safe travel home.
Bonding approval for the Station Block Development Project.
We are done with that. Our next one is number 12. Scope of work. You guys may recall you gave me permission to enter into a scope of work for ALB Consulting. This is AJ Bittner is his name. to provide us some consulting services to include helping us out with Pine Street development and helping with RFPs and things of that nature. I have not finalized a scope with him yet. I would like to get that done as soon as Alan can help me look it over. I do not have a copy of it for you tonight. I'm still working with AJ to try to finalize that. I would ask that we probably hold that till our August meeting.
I move to table item 12 for our next meeting.
A second.
A motion and a second that we table item number 12. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Dennis,
Aye.
Ms. Deitch,
Aye.
Mr. Werner,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. All right, next item is GR Beautiful update and approvals.
The update right now, if you're beautiful, I have talked to Mr. Barry Shane. He assured me that right now they're working diligently to put their construction funding in place. As soon as their construction funding is committed, they have to provide notice to the state with proof of that in a notice form to the state. And at that point in time, I do believe the state would, I assume, give them access to their commitment of redevelopment tax credits. I do believe their tax credits are contingent upon the necessary documentation that is required of them. That's where I'm at right now. They have told me that they have about 180 something reservations for condos at this point in time in the development. Interesting enough, I think over half of those are Michigan City people who reside and or who want to come back to Michigan City or have lived here. So just interesting statistics. I'm so sorry. Absolutely. It generates differently. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Report from legal counsel.
I have three things tonight. First, there was an executive session held before this meeting. No items were discussed that were contrary to the open door law. No decisions were made. Secondly, at Chris Chatfield's next to last meeting, we were talking afterwards, and he said, "You think if for the last meeting that I preside as chairman and as a member of the Redevelopment Commission, you not wear a suit and tie?" And I said, well, I would, but then I had to go to had a hearing that day and I couldn't keep my promise. I literally just came back from a funeral in Florida, didn't get back in town till about 4:15, 4:30. So Chris, if you're watching tonight, this is for you. The third thing, the most important thing, is that, as you will recall, the county council approved our petition for vacating a public alleyway as part of the station block and transit center development project. That was important and necessary so that Global Engineering could then take the 10 different parcels that are out there, resurvey them and replat them as two plats, one for the garage, one for the mixed use building, and then that gets recorded as well. But the first step of that process was for the recording of that ordinance. Under the authority of our county auditor, that was not permitted because it was his claim that property taxes were still owed on the adjacent properties or adjacent parcels, which we own, 8 of the 10, to those as adjoining to that alleyway. It is the position of our county auditor that purchasing agreements cannot include pro rata arrangements, and a pro rata arrangement would basically be, as we included within all the purchase agreements, not only for the station block, but on all previous purchase agreements that we've always done, at least since I've been counsel, that basically says that for the date of ownership that you have the property, you're responsible for property taxes that year. As soon as the Redevelopment Commission takes ownership of that property, because we're a tax exempt entity by statute as well as IRS regulations, we are not responsible for property taxes. Furthermore, when you look at what the types of expenditures the Redevelopment Commission is allowed to spend money on, glaringly missing from that are payments for property taxes. What that means to this commission, personally, is that if you approve and if you spend money that you're not authorized to do so, you have personal individual exposure to where you have to pay that money back. In this particular case, we're talking about property taxes of approximately $7,600, $7,700. So how do we get past this dead end? You have no authority in which to pay this money, as should you, and we have an auditor who's saying you have to. Now, why this becomes even more important is if we have not conveyed these parcels over to to Flaherty and Collins on or before July 31st, we are in breach of our agreement, not only with them, but then we become in breach of our agreement with NICD. Potentially, the Redevelopment Commission could stand to be exposed in damages for breach of contract in excess of $100 million over just $7,700. So what I did in the interim, and this is what I'm getting to in terms of my roundabout way of getting to needing your approval, when I originally learned of the problem with the not being able to record that ordinance for that reason, I filed a motion for declaratory judgment on behalf of the commission and sought an immediate injunctive relief, which would have been for a court to order the county auditor, no, you need to record these ordinance, or you need to record this ordinance, and you need to permit conveyance of parcels from the Redevelopment Commission to Flaherty and Collins. That was the first thing. Unfortunately, I did file it in Judge Dahlbrink's court without remembering that Judge Dahlbrink routinely recuses himself because of his relationship with the Michigan City attorney, and therefore anything having to do with Michigan City, he recuses himself for. But as I've thought further, we may also be in a situation of where all the judges in LaPorte County do not want to get into a situation because of contesting something with another branch of government within county government because of the prohibition of one branch of government telling another branch of government what to do. So by the time this whole thing plays out, we are going to be well past July 31st, and we are going to be well in breach of contract with both Flaherty and Collins and NICD. So I don't need your approval for the first part of this, is that I'm going to take money out of my accounts and my building account, and I'm going to pay the $7,600 under the belief that I know I'm right. I just am. What I need your permission for is to amend the original motion for declaratory judgment that will include an order from the court that, one, yes, you are correct. You cannot assess taxes against a governmental entity such as the Redevelopment Commission. And so therefore, Mr. Auditor, you need to approve the recorder's office to record these deeds, this ordinance, and to record conveyance of documents, conveyance of parcels to Flaherty and Collins. And then I'm also asking then that I would seek damages for repayment of the money that will be paid for the taxes, since they cannot be legally collected against a governmental entity. So that's the first thing. The final thing is just to make sure that you're aware of one other reason, one other problem that's created by this determination by the county auditor, is that, as you will recall, there is at the former 1002 Franklin Street parcel, that's a IDEM site, contamination cleanup, which is going on. but will not be completed by IDEM procedures and regulations by the time Flaherty and Collins will want to commence with construction of the mixed-use portion later on this summer or in early fall. Part of the rules that allow things to occur under cleanup sites is for an agreement for an environmental covenant that will basically say, yes, you can do certain things on this property for developmental purposes. These are things you can't do, but those are subject to our approval. And when I say our approval in conjunction with Flaherty and Collins, and I've already had several conversations with them as to what they're likely to approve for environmental restrictive covenant and what they would not. For example, an environmental restrictive covenant would say you can't drop your own well in there and use it for drinking water. Well, there was never any plan to do that because they were going to tap into the city's water. So obviously we'd have no objection to that restrictive covenant. On the other hand, they want to say, a restrictive covenant say there could be no residential development on the first floor of the project. Well, that's a non-starter for Flaherty and Collins because their plan is to have residential units on the first floor. So that's a non-starter. We also realize that there's probably going to have to be a need for a vapor intrusion system to some level within that development. Whether it goes up 1 floor, 2 floors, 5 floors, that hasn't been determined yet. But we know the cost on that's going to be somewhere around $500,000. And Flaherty and Collins are going to say, yeah, well, okay, we're all right with that. But you're going to pay whatever the dollar for dollar cost is to install that. And we're still in the discussions with that. The point to all that, though, is the fact that generally is going to take, before we get to that point of where IDEM will issue a comfort letter for those kind of restrictive covenants, is going to be anywhere from a 90 to 120-day process. Well, they can't begin that process until we have the properties platted out, surveyed, plotted out, and then subsequently conveyed. So again, all these things that are time sensitive, deadline sensitive, and need to occur cannot occur given the current ruling that we are currently facing. If it were anything else but that, I sure would not be putting $7,700 of my own money on for this project. However, I know the work that Skylar's done on this. I know the work that I have done on this. I know the work that all of us have done on this, both past and present commissions, to get us to this point. And we are at a point of, everybody says it, we are at a point of where we're of a fantastic and a generational project for Northwest Indiana and for Michigan City. And we not only can we not afford to have this not happen, given all the money that's been spent already to get us to this point, but we just can't have a situation where it's permitted to have both NICD tell us, well, we're in violation of the contract, and F&C to walk away from this contract, and us having, once again, a lot of egg left on our face. With that's my roundabout way of saying, and if you're sensing a little bit of anger here, you'd be wrong. It's a whole lot of anger. And I know Skylar feels the same way too, as we've talked about this extensively over the past week. But we need to fix this. We need to get this done. We need to get off Jump Street. So what I'm asking for the commission tonight, from the commission tonight, is one, authorizing initially what I've already done, and that is for a declaratory resolution, but to amend that to include reimbursement for any fee, any amount of money that's paid to pay off those taxes, so we can continue with the process. But then also, as part of that too, is a reimbursement of my services. Unfortunately, I have to stick with the $150 an hour rate, and not the Randy Rampolla rate or something like that. But that's okay. We need to. We just can't be in a situation come July 31st and not be able to convey these properties over to F&C. Nor can we afford to not be doing anything until July 31st and hamstring Shem from being able to complete the surveys of the property and to replat this so we can move forward for the reasons that I cited. And that's what I'm asking for.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I need a motion that basically authorizes me to to go forth with seeking a declaratory judgment against the LaPorte County Auditor and seeking to record the ordinance for vacating the public alleyway, to reimburse the Redevelopment Commission by way of any money paid for, which is basically mine, but reimburse for payment of the property taxes that allow this to go forth, and to include an assessment against the county auditor for reasonable attorney fees at the rate of $150 an hour, my standard fee.
I so move.
And I will second.
All right, with that, any additional discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Dennis,
Aye.
Ms. Deutsch,
Aye.
Mr. Warner,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, report by director.
Alan, I assume you'll go pay this tomorrow? No, it's fine. Thank you. Please. So tonight, my only report would be that it's been a long time getting here today. Thank you guys for bearing with us. This is a big step. We made some big steps tonight. Now we got to go through all the other approvals and boards and commissions with respect to our station block. But we're going to get it done. One thing I have before us tonight is I'm just going to kind of lay this out there. You may recall we worked with Mr. Brad Minnick and Primera to put together we were working with a bus shelter program, and the bus shelter program got lumped into another project, and that project didn't happen. So subsequently, the bus shelter program didn't happen. And what I need to do is I need to pull that bus shelter program out of that project, because that project will not move until September 1st, Labor Day, because it involves some downtown streets, and we don't want to disrupt our seasonal traffic. We promised the general public we wouldn't do that. But in the interim, it would be nice to get our 10 new bus shelters out into the public for use this winter. For that, I need to put together a bid proposal for bidding that out separately. Likewise, you may recall that we gave permission. We worked with our school corporation and with our Board of Public Works, and we have designated in the interim some public parking that could be used by NICD should they need it for the double tracking project as we build this garage. Some of those lots need to be restriped. So as part of this project and the designation, we committed to restriping these areas, which I can assure you, most of them do not have striping on them or is long gone, because they honestly just haven't been used as much as they should have in the past, and they've been plowed, et cetera, and then never replaced. So the other project that Brad would do for us would be to put together a bid package to reconfigure and restripe some of our parking lots that we were using for both public parking and for public parking for the NICD purposes as well. I have asked him to put together a proposal for us for Haas to do this. He works for Haas at this point in time. And he has told me a number to do both of these projects and get them back on the street, if you will, for proposals, would be a not to exceed $50,000 to run those projects for us, collect the bids, review the bids, make recommendations to both us and the Board of Works. The bus shelter is a public works project as well. But right now he's given me a proposal for not to exceed with two projects. And the two projects are the Michigan City Bus Shelter Program, our pilot program, and an existing Michigan City parking lots restriping package. I haven't had Alan review this because I just got it tonight. But it is a not to exceed $50,000. I would ask that you guys just consider this, and I don't necessarily need permission tonight. But I will tell you that in August, we would like to take the bus shelter program out into the community with the public hearings that are required by the federal government requires Miss Robin Tillman to do bus route hearings, public hearings for bus routes, revisions. Basically, they take public input. It's just a public meeting and outreach project that they do, and they do it I think every year they have to do it. But this year, we would like to include the bus shelter program as part of that, as something new, a new amenity to that. So that happens in August. But I think at this point in time, Brad was just kind of looking to get this before you guys and just kind of see where you guys are at with this. But I think it would expedite both of these projects very quickly. I don't know what I'm looking for tonight.
Need a consensus on that,
A
or
consensus, or can we take a vote? I don't know. Okay, I'd have to bring it back, but a consensus would be nice. Is this something that I can tell Brad that we will consider the not to exceed 50,000 to get these two projects back out there and get them bid and get them hopefully awarded through we have already set aside money for construction for the bus shelters. We just need someone to come in and construct them. And he assures me that he thinks we can get them actually either bidded or quoted and construct them in a timely manner and hopefully have them out before winter hits.
right? So we have a consensus here to
Yeah, I support that.
I support.
All right.
I will get this back to Brad, let him know that we have a consensus. And then if there's any update, Alan, I'll let you review this in the interim and then get it back before the board next month. Absolutely. Unless we have to have some other meeting. I don't foresee that, but if not, I'll bring it back to the board next month. Other than that, I don't have any other updates. Any questions for me? Anything forgetting to talk about? Hopefully, no. Okay, good. Thank you, guys.
All right, public comment.
Yeah, Tommy Kolovic, 1316 Ohio Street. I want to congratulate the commission, express my gratitude, especially Attorney Alan Sirik. I'm getting a town center drive project going. I hope we can soon take some bids and get that repaved. I kind of astonished that Lowe's and Myers wasn't aware that they didn't own the roadway portions of that their property. And maybe we could go back on Mr. Delaportis, who was the developer of that, and saying Mr. Pugh. I think that guy kind of messed that up back then. This really should be duly noted. This past Thursday, July 13th, it marked the 50-year anniversary of probably one of the biggest redevelopment projects that happened in our city's history. That was the night of the inferno that destroyed the Pullman Standard rail car shops. I think we all know the history of that. The car shops had closed and Winski's had purchased it and they were converting it over to warehousing. Contractors were in there and doing some cutting on some beams and they left the bolts smoldering and they went home at 3:30 and about 11 o'clock at night that night. They didn't notice that by the time it was all up in flames and the wind was blowing out of the south that night, or it would have been another great Chicago fire in our hands. And so we all know that about 10 years later, the developers that purchased developed Lighthouse Mall bought that, and that's why we have Lighthouse Mall there. So I think that should be really duly noted. These photos were taken by a gentleman named Stuart Mickard, and it's all from the website monon.org. I have one that it was before what it looked like the car shops. That was taken by Bill Swedenberg. I think we've all seen his photos. He's a news dispatch for many, many decades. So I just wanted to make note of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. Any comments on the screen? No? All right, commissioners' comments? We have a comment? Kevin?
First of all, I want to apologize for being late to the meeting. I was in South Bend having some eye surgery. Oh, I'm sorry.
You need that over again?
First of all, I want to apologize for being late to the meeting. I was in South Bend having some eye surgery. And secondly, I have a question for Skylar. I've gotten a couple of calls from people who have their name on the list for the condos at the You Are Beautiful site. There was supposed to be a meeting that was going to be held a long time ago, and they're asking me
I
if
think
we know anything about when that meeting may be held.
I've been told tentatively it's going to happen in September. They were waiting on the final drawings for the units, and then I think they finalized kind of, what are the perks of the units? Like you can choose your different things that happen in the units. So I think that's what they were waiting on, is just finalization of that. But I've been told September.
Do you have any idea of the range of cost for the units?
That's just it. They ranged based on, I think, finished, and no, I can't remember what the square footages are. There are base square footages, but I think there are different finishes that create the range. And then different, if you're on one side versus the front side. I mean, there's things like that, but I do not recall what those are, but I'm curious too about that. And hopefully in September, we would find out more about that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, go ahead, Angie.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm excited about us moving forward with the TIF expansion and including Michigan Boulevard, which I thought should have happened a long, long time ago. And there's some much needed development on the boulevard, and I think this is our opportunity to really do some good things on the entryway into our city. And then second, just ready to get this thing going, getting it done sooner than later. So I'm excited and going to be seeking support from our council members to push this thing forward so we can see this thing happen. So I'm just excited for all the things we have on the table in the month of August.
Yeah, and I just wanted to express my thanks for our attorney jumping in and making sure this thing gets moving by paying our taxes that we don't owe and moving forward with this. So thank you very much.
All right. I'd like to remind everybody the next meeting is August 14th. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
No move.
We're adjourned.